Hello everyone, my name is Miles Hewitt, and I'll be giving you a presentation on the ethics of cyber warfare. So what is cyber warfare? It's an attempted attack to damage another nation's computers or information networks through viruses or denial of service attacks. Now, I'm going to be looking more at nation-state examples of cyber attacks, but they aren't just propagated by nation states. They can be done by individuals or organizations. Now in the U.S., the clandestine services are the ones who mostly focus on cybersecurity, namely the U.S. Cyber Command, which is part of the Department of Defense. Now there haven't been any binding legal obligations internationally with regards to cyber warfare, and that was the main thing I was looking at. Was there's already something called the Geneva Convention, and that has to do with the treatment of people during armed conflicts. Now, the Geneva Geneva Convention has its origins in the 1800s and has been updated throughout history, particularly after World War II, because of the immense bloodshed during that conflict and the advent of nuclear weapons. Right, it was a new level of warfare. And the same thing is happening today with cyber warfare. It's unprecedented what people are able to do with hacking tools and denial of service. You can shut down a whole country. And so there have been instances where the U.S. Has been in talks with other countries, including Russia, including China, to come to agreement, or they've been asked to come speak to their officials. And there's been a few agreements signed. One was signed with China in 2015, between China and the U.S., but nothing has been binding, and it's hard to really tell what was done because you can't verify what another nation's clandestine services are doing. Now, I want to start my focus with some examples. There was one called Stuxnet. That was a joint U.S.-Israel program. It caused physical damage to Iranian nuclear facilities, and it was uploaded via a thumb drive. So a contractor working at one of these facilities had to upload that, and it went undetected for years. Now, this was really a watershed moment for cyber warfare because up until this point, cyber warfare was really relegated to just surveillance and collecting confidential information. The program was so advanced that it was able to infiltrate the system without being detected, would actually tell the people working on the system that nothing was wrong, all the while gradually degrading the performance of their centrifuges that Iran was using in their facilities. And eventually they spun out of control and were destroyed, or at least the estimates are at 1/5 of the centrifuges were, but it was a significant attack. If you look at this graphic, it gives you a good breakdown as to how the malicious code was able to be put into that system and bring it down. Another attack I want to talk about is one known as WannaCry, and the origin of where the worldwide attack originated is unclear, but the actual code for the ransomware was derived from zero-day vulnerabilities discovered and leaked U.S. government documents from cyber warfare databases. And what a zero-day vulnerability is something that cannot be dealt with on the 0 day, on the 0 hour. The vulnerability appears, there's no information regarding this security flaw, and so now whoever the victim is of this security attack, the cyber attack, they have to deal with that attack in real time. Now, this locked out infected computers, so it encrypted their files, locked people out. It demanded money for the files to be unlocked, and as time elapsed, it would demand more money and then eventually it would destroy files. And it affected a lot of systems. It actually infected the uh, government computers in the UK, affected hospitals, affected a lot of businesses. So obviously, cyber warfare is an extremely effective weapon. So we need to understand what are the beneficial aspects and what are the detrimental aspects. The benefits, I would say, is that you can wage warfare for whatever reason, whether it be economic, political. I'm not saying necessarily ethically correct, but you can limit the amount of damage in terms of human harm. You don't have to sacrifice human life to carry out a cyber attack, but of course there could be significant damages resulting from an attack. And also from a military standpoint, there's less physical logistics, at least on the surface. You don't have to move aircraft carriers, you don't have to move supplies. You just need to know how to implement that attack. I think in some situations this could actually be used for good in stopping a rogue state or a rogue organization from launching an attack that could harm a lot of people. If a cyber weapon could be used to stop a missile launch, as has been theorized by some people with regard to North Korean missile launches. Obviously, it's almost impossible to substantiate these claims, which is another problem with international treaties regarding cybersecurity. It's really hard to say who's done what and when. I think they could also be beneficial to companies and also just the end user. We're all end users of digital systems, our phones, our computers. And I think it would be good if the government used the information they have to work with companies to patch security flaws. But in fact, what we've learned through leaks such as the so-called Vault 7 leaks, which were distributed by WikiLeaks, revealed that the NSA, CIA, and other organizations of the U.S. government were exploiting the zero-day vulnerabilities I was speaking about. And so rather than tell the public and tell the companies that there is an issue and you can patch this, they use that to their advantage for surveillance purposes. But I would argue that overall that actually weakened global cybersecurity, because now so many networks are vulnerable, and no matter the level of security, pretty much everything is connected. And there's actually been intrusions back into US databases. That's actually how these leaks occurred. But sometimes these leaks are also a result of employees just leaking information. That's a risk in and of itself. Unfortunately, I think we're at a point where an international treaty in line with the Geneva Convention, something of that level, is just not feasible. It's not agreeable. The U.S., up until really just a few years ago, was adamant about not getting into one of these binding agreements, whereas the Russians in particular have reached out to us on multiple occasions and wanted to avoid exactly what we're experiencing today, the uncertainty of cyber warfare and the real possibility of it bringing down critical infrastructure. Russia has been accused of attacking our electrical grid, interfering in U.S. elections. There's a lot to be lost and a lot to be gained depending on which side you're on. So again, I think now we're at the point where it's kind of gone from a Cold War to really new technology to now people have really advanced in their ability to use these weapons, and I just don't see any side letting up anytime soon. That said, I do believe there will be an international agreement in the future. There have been talks at the UN, there have been talks between individual nations. I think it's just going to get to the point where they have to, and it would benefit them in the sense that if everyone is adhering to certain guidelines and there's an incident that falls outside those guidelines, using the assumption that everyone's adhering to the rules, someone else can be held accountable. The search can be on the people who are not in the agreement. Thank you.